Serafina's povey. I could tell Judy was still wound tight long after we'd left the hotel. She walked stiffly beside me all the way to OTS, her jaw clenched, shoulders hunched as though Brinjar's shadow still lingered at her back. "Come on," I said gently, catching her wrist before she could retreat into the building and probably wallow in the dorms. "We're not ending the night like this." Her wide, uncertain eyes flicked to mine. "Sarah, No arguments." I tugged her down a side street toward a small cafe that stayed open late for students and guests alike. The glow from inside spilled across the pavement, warm and welcoming. You need something sweet after a bitter experience like that. I shot her a smile, which she reluctantly returned. My treat. We slid into a booth by the window. The scent of baked bread and caramel clung to the air, calming and indulgent. Judy hesitated only a moment before ordering a slice of chocolate cake so rich it looked sinful. I went with my actual favorite dessert, strawberry cheesecake, light enough to keep the heaviness of the evening at bay. For a while, we ate in silence. The sugar did its work, loosening the knot of tension between us. When Judy finally set her fork down, her hands shook faintly. "Thank you," she murmured, not looking at me. "If you hadn't shown up tonight, if you hadn't stepped in, that would have gone horribly wrong. Brinjar would have had his way, and I would have been disqualified. Everything I worked for would have been gone." I hated how right she was. No one was standing up for her when we walked in. Sure, Brinjar was an asshole, but he held more power than Judy, and that was what people only ever really saw. I leaned forward, placing a hand over hers. "You held your own in there. That was pretty impressive." She scoffed self-deprecatingly. "I was terrified," she confessed. "I was truly considering cutting my losses and just accepting the blame so that the nightmare would end." She shook her head. "That bastard really had me believing it was a mistake to have ever joined OTS." "Hey," I said softly but firmly enough to hold her gaze. "You fought hard to be here. You earned this chance, Judy. Don't let anyone, least of all a brawn for brains like Brinjar, make you believe otherwise." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, eyes glistening. "My family, we've never had much. Omegas in our pack are always expected to bow, to serve, to fade into the background. But if I perform well in this tournament, even if I don't win, it could change things for them. Give us a little more standing. Maybe my younger brother won't get pushed around at training. Maybe my mother won't have to work herself to the bone." Her words pierced me, sharp and familiar. That desperate hope, I knew it intimately. "Then we'll make sure you get that chance," I said quietly. "No one is taking it from you." She looked up then, and for the first time since Brinjar, the faint smile that flickered across her lips was genuine. But it didn't last. Her expression grew conflicted, and she pulled her hand out of mine, twisting her napkin between her fingers. "I need to confess something." I tilted my head, leaning back. "Go on." "Back when you first arrived," she said haltingly, "I thought you didn't deserve to be here. I thought you'd gotten in because of connections, because of Lucian, or the Lockwoods, or the Blackthorns, Jessica and her group." She hesitated, guilt flashing across her face. "They made you out to be arrogant, useless. And I believed them." A familiar sting cut through me, but I kept my face neutral. "But after today," she rushed on, "after seeing how you handled Brinjar, after watching the way people listened to you, I realized they were wrong. You," she faltered, cheeks flushing, "you draw people in without even trying. You effortlessly command respect, even without a wolf form. That's magnetic and rare." Heat rose to my cheeks despite myself. Compliments still sat strangely on my shoulders, especially when they caught me off guard. "Judy," she shook her head firmly. "I mean it. You saved me tonight, and you didn't even have to." Her head dipped. "I'm sorry for judging you without knowing you." "Hey." She looked up, and I held her gaze, something soft blooming in my chest. "Maybe you had the wrong impression before, but you're willing to see past that to the real me." I smiled. "That matters more." The air between us shifted, lighter, warmer. A seed had been planted, one that could grow into something stronger than mere acquaintance. For the first time, I thought of Judy not just as another student or an ally by circumstance, but as a friend. When we finally parted ways outside the cafe, she hugged me briefly. "Thank you again, Sarah," she whispered before hurrying off with renewed determination in her step. I lingered in the night air, smiling faintly to myself. But the warmth didn't last, because that's when I heard her voice, touching. My blood chilled. I turned, and there she was, my scheduled dose of poison before I could even be bothered to miss her. Celeste. Celeste Pove. Do you know how fucking humiliating it is to look for your partner, and the first place you can think to search is where his ex-wife works? I didn't know what I would do if I found Kieran in the hotel where Sarah was working, but I certainly didn't bargain for that nauseating spectacle where my scheming sister once again managed to convince a group of people that she was worth shit. For years, Sarah had been nothing more than a ghost trailing behind me, silent, invisible, desperate for scraps of attention. I had been the sun, golden, adored, untouchable, and now? Wolves who should have sneered at her weakness hung on her every word, and the weak and useless with which she should have been ostracized now looked at Sarah like she was the moon incarnate. It made me sick. When she turned toward me, her eyes were sharp, wary, as if she expected my attack. "Celeste," she said flatly, "I would ask how you're faring since your little accident, but it turns out I don't care." I narrowed my eyes. I didn't even want to think about how spectacularly that plan had crumbled. I'd expected carnage in the wake of my accident. Sure, my mother turning on Sarah, willing to hit her, was satisfying, but seeing Kieran block her, watching Ethan run after her, I put the images out of my mind because if I thought about them too much, I would lose my shit and start screaming in front of this cafe. Instead, I folded my arms, painting my lips into a smile as I steered the topic away. "That was quite impressive in the lobby. You've certainly changed, sister. But you've had 10 years to practice, haven't you? 10 years studying the art of seduction? Because look at you now. Every stray mutt within a 10-mile radius is suddenly under your spell." I couldn't even tell if the jab landed because she didn't flinch. Infuriating. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice low, edged with something that made the fine hairs at my nape stir. "Unlike you, Celeste, I don't need masks. People trust me because I'm real, because I treat everyone with genuineness, something you never quite mastered." I clenched my jaw. She was supposed to break under my words, not throw them back in my face. "Keep telling yourself that," I spat back. "Just because it fits so well, you've forgotten you have a mask of your own on?" I scoffed. "One day, Sarah, I will rip that shit off and everyone will have proof of your—" "Speaking of proof," she leaned in, her breath ghosting my cheek, and her eyes glinted with menace that caught me off guard. "I have that." Her lips curled. "Proof that your little stunt, the self-staged attack, was nothing more than a performance. If I wanted to, I could reveal to the world tomorrow that their precious Princess Lockwood is nothing but a conniving bitch." My chest constricted. It had all happened so fast. She couldn't possibly have proof that I threw myself in front of that car, the car which Abby was driving at the perfect speed to make sure I wasn't too gravely hurt. Sarah was bluffing. She had to be. But my entire world was built on their trust, their adoration. If that cracked, if she exposed me. She smiled then, a cold, dangerous thing that sent a shiver down my spine. And the best part? Everyone believes me even without the proof. It wouldn't take much to show them the truth about you. Especially since this isn't even the first time you acted like a bitch, would it? My nails bit into my palms. Rage boiled under my skin, thick and choking. How dare she? How dare she think she could threaten me? I wanted to spit back, to remind her she had always lived in my shadow, that she always would. That wouldn't change after all this time. But even as I opened my mouth, dread gnawed at the edges of my fury. Because I had seen it tonight, hadn't I? The way the crowd watched her, the way even wolves from other packs tilted their heads toward her voice. If she kept this up, if she kept growing, it wouldn't stop at Kieran and Ethan. The day would come when the whole world believed her over me. Never. I would not allow it. I would rather die, or better yet, kill her. Celeste, a man's voice, familiar, unwelcome. The sound froze me, cooling my fury into fear. Sarah's eyes darted past me. Curious, I watched them widen in recognition, and my heart jumped into my throat when she tilted her head respectfully and said, "Alpha Thomas." "Shit, shit, shit!" Celeste's Pove. "Alpha Thomas," Sarah greeted with a polite smile, her eyes darting curiously between us. "Is there anything I can help you with?" I knew I should relax my shoulders, ease the look of horror on my face, but I was too busy trying to keep my heart from pounding out of my chest. Oh no, that familiar voice answered, amusement edging his politeness. I thought I recognized your friend. Celeste, that is you, right? Sierra arched a brow, and I took in a deep breath. It was time to end this, before I gave the bitch another weapon in the arsenal she was building against me. I spun, forcing a detached smile onto my face. You must be mistaken, I said quickly, my words sharp as glass, my eyes unable to meet his. I don't know you. Before he could speak and declare that I, in fact, knew him, before he could list out all the ways I knew him and doom me, I turned on my heel and fled into the night. Cowardly? Perhaps, but better a hasty retreat than the ruin his presence threatened to unleash. I barely remembered how I got from that cafe door to my car. My heels clicked too fast across the pavement, my breath shallow, hands trembling as I gripped the door handle. I slammed the door shut, sealing myself inside. The air inside felt suffocating, hot against my skin. Sarah's voice still clung to me like a blood-sucking leech. Proof. I still didn't believe it truly. And yet, her eyes... No, damn it. I couldn't shake the feeling she had something real. And then he had appeared. Of all the people to walk out of the shadows, fucking Thomas Bain. I pressed my palms hard into the steering wheel, forcing steady breaths. It was fine. Everything wasn't ruined. Surely he was only passing through. Surely. A firm rap on my window shattered the fragile thought, and I flinched violently, head whipping toward the sound. There he was, his face lit by the amber streetlight, his derisive smirk every bit as mocking as I remembered. Terrible performance, Celeste, Thomas drawled, his voice muffled through the glass. You'd think a cunning shrew like you would have better acting skills. My stomach dropped. My fingers scrambled uselessly at the ignition, but before I could start the engine, he motioned lazily with one hand. Relax. I'm not here to expose you. I just stopped to say hello. I forced a scoff, rolling the window down an inch. How courteous of you. My voice was steadier than I felt, though my pulse pounded violently at my throat. His laugh was short, cutting. Don't flatter yourself. You never deserved courtesies from me. And then his voice dropped, the amusement vanishing like smoke, replaced by familiar loathing. Just like you never deserved Brett. The name struck like a slap. My nails dug into the leather wheel, but I tilted my head, painting my expression in the mask I'd worn since childhood. Oh, Thomas, you think dragging up old history will wound me? I shrugged, my shoulders aching from the tension suddenly winding through them. It was for the best. Brett and I were ill-fitted. Partners ought to be well-matched, from family to legacy. He knew it, too. Funny, Thomas said, his gaze unwavering, because he didn't know it until you shoved it in his face. He would have kept worshipping you till his last breath if you hadn't snapped the tether yourself. Something twisted inside me. A flash, Brett's stormy eyes the night we fought, his voice rough as he said, Fine, Celeste. If that's what you want, I accept. I had laughed at him, even as my stomach caved in on itself. I had thought he'd crawl back. He never did. I stiffened. He was beneath me. I did what was necessary. Thomas leaned closer to the glass, his smile frigid. He was too good for you, and you knew it. I thank the moon every damn day my friend got away from you before you rotted him completely. The words burned hotter than I wanted them to. I snapped my chin higher. Think what you want. I've already moved on. Soon, I'll become Luna of the Nightfang pack. Kieran Blackthorn's Luna, and then we'll see who rots. His laughter rang out, sharp and scornful. The toxic princess finally found a new throne to poison. I'll be sure to send my condolences to Nightfang. May the goddess save them all. My throat ached, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing the effect of his words. Good night, Thomas. I rolled the window up with deliberate slowness, savoring the finality of it. I started the car, forcing my hand not to shake, and drove off. Only when the city lights blurred around me did I realize how wet my lashes were. Damn it, no. No tears for him. My gaze dropped, unbidden, to the ink on my wrist. The tattoo we had gotten together, Brett's idea, a symbol of forever, of eternal love. I'd thought it glamorous then, romantic, and Brett hadn't known at the time, but Kieran was who I thought of when I branded that mark onto my skin. He was the one who was supposed to be my forever. The tears brimmed again, and I didn't know who they were for, Brett or Kieran. I swiped them away furiously. I did not regret. I could not regret. The only mistake I had made was walking away a decade ago, leaving the field wide open for Sarah to take my place in Kieran's bed. In his fucking heart. But she would never surpass me. She couldn't. I was the Lockwood princess. Radiant, destined. The one the elders whispered of since birth. The one born to stand at Kieran's side. She was nothing but a pathetic shadow that slithered behind me. By the time I reached the house, my fury had outpaced my fear. The moment I saw Kieran in the living room, the anger morphed into desperation. He looked up from a spread of documents, his dark hair rumpled from running his hand through it too many times, tired but still so infuriatingly gorgeous. I didn't even bother asking where he'd gone. As long as it hadn't been to Sarah's arms, I was appeased. For now. Kieran, I crossed the room quickly, dropping my purse, my voice rougher than intended. Mark me. His eyes widened. What? Mark me. I gripped his shoulders, nails biting through the fabric of his shirt. Tonight. Right fucking now. He pulled back slightly, frowning. Celeste, we agreed we'd respect Edward's traditions. The marking will be after we're married. My breath came sharp. Traditions? I laughed. The sound too high? Who cares about dusty traditions? We're already bound by promise. What difference does it make if you mark me now? He studied me, confusion shading to alarm. What's wrong? Did something happen tonight? No, I snapped too quickly. His brows furrowed further, and I softened, dropping my voice, my body trembling with the truth I could never fully cage. I need this, after everything. I need to feel that you're mine, that nothing can take you away. His jaw clenched, his silence unbearable. Celeste, I kissed him. Hard, desperate, crushing my mouth to his before he could reject me outright. If he marked me now, it would be sealed. There'd be no going back. But even as my lips pressed to his, he did not melt the way I wanted him to. The way I needed him to. His hands came up, not to pull me closer, but to push me gently, firmly back. Celeste, he began, his voice low, conflicted. You don't have to mark me now, I said, hating the desperation that laced my voice. Fuck, how did I get so fucking pathetic? But Kieran, I've been back for months now, and you won't even go further than kissing me. His jaw clenched. I'm trying to respect your father's wishes. Bullshit! I snapped. You didn't care about traditions and my father's wishes when you impregnated my sister. His eyes flared wide, and his grip on my shoulders tightened. Celeste. And then the shrill ring of his phone cut through the air. We froze. The name on the screen flashed once before he snatched it up. Daniel. Of fucking course. Kieran didn't even hesitate as he turned away from me and answered the call. The sound of his son's voice on the other end pulled him entirely away, his face softening with paternal concern. I stood there, chest heaving, lips still tingling, fury clawing at my insides. Even now, even after everything, Sarah's shadow reached between us, stealing what should have been mine. Not for much longer. Kieran's pav. Whatever tempest Celeste was trying to whip around me, it all faded at the thought of my son. Daniel, I answered, my voice softening despite the tension still clawing through the room. Dad! His words tumbled out, breathless and excited. I need your help. I'm in the kitchen, and I think I almost got it right this time, but, well, there's one thing missing. I blinked, confusion tugging my brows together. Missing from what? The elixir, he declared, as though I should have known, waving his hands for emphasis, hair sticking up from the number of times he must have dragged his fingers through it. The one from Dr. Ainsworth's notes, the energizing drink for wolves. I found it in Grandpa's library, and he was really famous for powerful potions even stronger than Alcanor's. A chuckle rumbled through me, and I didn't even flinch when a door upstairs slammed, courtesy of Celeste, no doubt. Let me get this straight, Danny. You're telling me you're trying to brew one of Alcanor's fabled elixirs? I asked, my lips twitching despite myself. He rolled his eyes exaggeratedly. Not Alcanor, Dad. Dr. Ainsworth. His elixirs were much stronger than Alcanor's. I nodded, trying to feign seriousness to match his. Right, got it, he nodded. Mom's been working so hard lately, and I thought that if I could make the elixir for her, then she wouldn't feel so worn down. His earnestness hit me square in the chest. Gods, the way he adored his mother, so fierce, so unyielding. If only I'd given her even half of that consideration. I leaned back on the couch, letting the weight of the day loosen just enough to savor the purity and comfort of my son's presence. So what's missing? I asked, humoring him. Angelica Root, he said at once, his voice dropping to a whisper as though it were a forbidden treasure. I checked the cabinets twice, and I asked Chef, but we don't have any. I had Angelica root, a harmless herb, hardly the stuff of legends. Still, at the sight of him standing there in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, stubborn determination burning in his eyes, it was all I could do not to laugh. "You've already tried making it?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, sheepishly, "Twice." I bit down a chuckle, shaking my head. "And?" "The first one tasted like boiled socks," he admitted. "The second exploded. Chef may or may not smell like rotten eggs for a while. He's refused to keep helping me." My laugh broke free then, low and warm. "Daniel, I'll get it right," he insisted. "If I can just find the last ingredient, I know it'll work." I wanted to tell him legends were just that, legends, that no root or herb could breathe new strength into Sarah, but the words died on my tongue. I couldn't bear to puncture his iron belief. Instead, I leaned forward, resting my forearm against my knee. "Listen to me, champ. Angelica root's hard to come by here, especially this late. Even if I wanted to get it, there's no guarantee I could get it to you in time." His silence carried disappointment, and I felt it like a weight. "But," I added quickly, "I've got a better idea." His head lifted, his eyes lighting up. "Better than Dr. Ainsworth's elixir?" "Much better," I said solemnly. "Because instead of relying on an old doctor's scribbles, we'll come up with something ourselves, something only you and I know about, a secret recipe that's just for your mom." His breath caught, excitement reborn. "Really? Really?" I let a smile curve my lips, and he mirrored it. "We'll work on it when you return, and we'll make it so good she'll believe it is one of Alcanor's fabled elixirs." "Yes," his voice burst out, brimming with glee. "Dad, that's genius. We'll call it the Blackthorn Brew." I chuckled. "Careful, that sounds like something that should come with a warning label." He laughed, and the sound lifted the heaviness from my chest. For a while, we talked. Half-serious debates over ingredients, whether honey would overpower ginseng, whether cinnamon was too obvious. He scribbled notes like a little scholar, his enthusiasm infectious. For those few minutes, the world outside didn't exist. There were no rogues, no threats, no cantankerous women clawing at my shoulders, just my boy and his impossible dream of giving his mother the moon in a bottle. "Okay, bud," I chuckled when a yawn cut him off mid-sentence. "I think you should head on to bed." He nodded. "Okay. Oh, Dad, by the way, Grandpa said you should call him." I stiffened. I judiciously ignored my father's calls all day, but if he was sending Daniel to me, I knew I could no longer avoid the conversation. "Right," I said after a pause. "Thanks, bud. I should do it now." "Good," Daniel said firmly, his best imitation of adult authority. He said it was important. "Yep," I said tightly. "Good night, Danny. Sweet dreams." "Night, Dad." The quiet of the room pressed in after I hung up, heavier than before. I raked a hand through my hair, then dialed my father. He answered on the second ring. "Kieran." His voice was sharp, clipped. No preamble. "Father." I kept my tone neutral, though my jaw tightened instinctively. "I assume you know why I wanted this call," I exhaled. "How did you find out?" "You forget that I was Alpha before you. Nothing goes on that I'm unaware of." Lovely, I thought. Nothing better than a hovering predecessor. "Okay," I braced myself. "Let's hear it." "Cuff the attitude," my father snapped, his tone hardening further. "Marcus Draven has always been volatile, but you've done a spectacular job of pouring gasoline on his sparking temper." I bristled. "I handled it." "You mishandled it." His voice cracked like lightning. "Do you have any idea what kind of fire you've stoked? Marcus may lead a diminished pack, but a hot-headed alpha with nothing left to lose is more dangerous than one with full strength. And if he throws his lot in with the rogues, especially since his heir is one of them, we will all pay for your recklessness." My hands curled into fists against my knees. "I know my limits." "No, you know your rage," he snapped. "You know your impulse. You let your emotions steer you, and our pack will bleed for it." The words hit deep because they carried a kernel of truth. My wrath had burned too hot where Jack was concerned. He'd crossed the line when he targeted Sarah, and I couldn't deny that my fury might have made me a little rash. But admitting that weakness to my father was out of the question. "I won't let Marcus threaten my family," I said coldly. "It's not about that," he shot back. "Without a Luna who reinforces you when you're outnumbered, you think your warriors are enough? You think raw strength is enough?" Foolish. A pack is only as strong as the bonds at its heart. You know this, Kieran. I gritted my teeth. I thought Mother was more than happy to play Luna. Don't act sly with me, he retorted. The rogues are gathering, Marcus is snarling, and you are parading about without a true Luna at your side. Expedite your wedding to Celeste. Seal the bond. Give your wolves something solid to rally behind before this explodes into war. His words pressed against the unease already coiled in me. Celeste, her wolf was still frayed, her mind increasingly unstable. I thought of her desperate eyes earlier tonight, her hands clutching at me with something close to mania. I thought of the very possibility that she'd thrown herself in front of a moving vehicle. She wasn't ready, not for the bond, and she sure as hell wasn't ready for the responsibility. And yet, my father wasn't entirely wrong. The pack needed more than my strength. It needed faith, unity, a Luna. My voice dropped, iron low. She's not ready. She doesn't need to be ready. She needs to stand at your side. Everything else comes later. No. The word burst sharper than intended. That's not how this works. If I bind myself to someone who can't carry the weight, I cripple the pack, not strengthen it. His silence was thick then. You're letting sentiment cloud judgment again. Always sentiment with you, Kieran. Even with Sarah. My teeth snapped together. Don't. I couldn't bear to think about Sarah right now, as that couldn't bear to slide down the slippery slope of comparing her eligibility as Luna to Celeste's. Then prove me wrong, my father growled. Handle Marcus. Contain the rogues. Do it without dragging our name through the mud of your temper. Otherwise, I expect to see preparations for a wedding within the fortnight. The line went dead. I sat in the heavy quiet, the phone still pressed to my ear. My father's words reverberated like thunder, a resounding truth I had to face. Marcus was dangerous. Jack was reckless. The rogues were circling like vultures. And through all the crowding thoughts, my son's innocent voice echoed in my memory. I closed my eyes, forcing breath through my lungs. Whatever chaos was gathering, I would not let it touch Daniel or Sarah. I would not allow harm to reach my family. Kieran's pav. I found Celeste pacing the room, hair wild like she'd been pulling at it. She'd changed into a silk gown, and it clung to her like armor. The fireplace in the room was lit, and the light sharpened her edges, a queen ready for war instead of rest. She spun at the sound of the door opening, hope and accusation flashing across her face all at once. As I live and breathe, she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Whatever could you be doing here? I ignored the bite. I had barely slept in my room since she moved in. I either slept in the pack house, spent the night in my office, or curled up in Daniel's bed. I kept my voice level. I wanted to let you know I'll be occupied for a while. There are matters I need to attend to. Her eyes narrowed. Occupied, she echoed, bitterness dripping from the word. Occupied with what exactly? I sighed. I'll make it up to you when I'm able. I'll take you out to dinner. Her laugh cracked sharply, equally as frustrated as it was angry. A dinner? That's your compensation? You couldn't even mark me when I begged you, when I fucking offered myself to you, and now you want to pacify me with a meal? Celeste. No. She hurled a vase, one that she herself had placed on the side table, against the wall, shards bursting across the floor. The scent of lilies flooded the room, heavy and cloying, as water soaked into the carpet. Another crash followed as she shoved a lamp aside. Shadows jumped violently with the firelight. Don't Celeste me like I'm some hysterical child. Do you think I don't know? You think I don't feel you pulling me away, using work and pack duties as fucking excuses? She seized a glass of water and hurled it at the wall. It shattered beside my head, sharp fragments skittering at my boots. Her breathing came ragged, chest rising and falling beneath the silk. Do you think I'll be pushed aside that easily? She shrieked. After everything? I dragged a hand over my face, wariness settling deep. Her words dug in, sharper because they weren't all lies. But right now, I was bone-tired, carrying the echo of my father's sharp words and Daniel's innocent excitement. I couldn't offer her the reassurance she desperately needed from me. I'll speak to you later, I said, turning away. She laughed again, brittle and furious, the sound like splintered glass scattering behind me. I didn't look back. The water cells were colder than usual, the dank air clinging to me like a second skin. Shadows danced across the stone as torches hissed weakly, their flames shivering in the draft. Jack sat chained to the wall, his body a canvas of bruises. His jaw was mottled purple and green, his lips split, but his expression curved in something close to cockiness. He looked up as I entered. "Back again, Alpha? Can't get enough of me?" I studied him for a moment, noting the arrogance simmering beneath his battered skin. He'd endured more than most would, yet he still sneered. That told me enough. Jack wasn't fighting for his own pride. He was tethered to something darker, something that gave him a false shield against fear. "You'll be leaving soon," I told him. He tilted his head, mockery brightening his eyes. "So my father came through, did he?" "I knew you'd fold. Nightfang," he scoffed. "All bark and no bite." I ignored the bait. "You're right. Your father wants you back and will release you." Jack's smile widened. "Wow. However, will I repay this great favor you've done me?" I stepped closer, my voice dropping. "I'm nothing if not altruistic. You'll also leave here with your wounds mended." Suspicion flickered across his features. "Compassion, Kieran? Don't insult me." "It isn't compassion," I said flatly. I nodded toward the healers waiting nearby. "See it as a peace offering, if you will. An ice shower to cool your father's temper." He scoffed, but didn't protest as the healers moved in. Their murmured incantations hummed low, their palms glowing faint gold as they pressed over his injuries. The air filled with the sharp tang of herbs and ozone. Skin knitted. Bruises faded to pale yellow. His breaths evened as pain leached away. What he didn't see was Gavin. Silent, invisible, embedding a restraint beneath the surface. A clever piece of work, like nearly imperceptible. A fail-safe, if you will. It would sap his transformation at the worst moment, chain his strength when he needed it most. Jack spat to the side when they were finished. "You think fixing me makes up for what you put me through? You'll regret this, Kieran. My father will make sure you choke on your arrogance." I crouched in front of him, my hand clamping hard on his jaw. His skin was clammy, his pulse frantic beneath my grip. "Listen carefully," I said, voice low, dangerous. "You're walking out of here with your life, not because of Marcus or pack politics, but because I chose it. Next time I see you, if you so much as blink wrong in my territory, alliance or no alliance, I will end you. Slowly. Torturously." His bravado faltered, the smug grin slipped. For a heartbeat, he was just a boy staring into the eyes of a predator. "Do you understand me?" I snarled, tightening my grip until his teeth ground together. His throat bobbed. Silence stretched, broken only by the drip of water against stone. Then, grudgingly, "Yes, good." I released him with a shove, standing tall again. "Get him out of my sight." The sound of iron chains echoed as they dragged him from the cell. His curses bounced off the walls, venomous but hollow. I waited until the last footsteps faded before Gavin stepped from the shadows. "All set," Gavin reported, his tone clipped. "Restraint is in place. He won't know it until he needs it most. I've assigned shadows to follow. He won't take a piss without me knowing." "Good," I said. My voice felt like gravel in my throat. Gavin's eyes gleamed. "You think he'll run straight back to the rogues?" "Let him. He thinks he's so clever, but he'll lead us straight to them." For a moment, silence stretched, heavy as the stone around us. Then a howl broke the night, distant and mournful, seeping through the barred window high on the wall. I turned toward it, moonlight slanting across my hands. My claws flexed against my palms, itching for blood. "I'm tired of cowards who thrive in shadows," I murmured. "If they're foolish enough to target me, I'll drag them into the light myself." Gavin's smirk was sharp. "And when they're in the light," I bared my teeth in a humorless smile, "then we'll burn them, every last one." Because I could not tolerate any threat to the legacy of wolves. Not to my pack, not to Daniel, not to Sarah. Never again. Seraphina's povee. 3 straight days of hosting duties had drained me more than I wanted to admit. Smiling until my jaw ached, bowing, shaking hands, welcoming one self-important alpha after another, it was exhausting in a way even training wasn't. But now, finally, the last of the visiting packs had been settled. Tonight, at least, I had my hours back. After seeing all my potential competitors, I was determined to pour those hours into training. After throwing that miraculous punch at Maya, I didn't want to lose my momentum. She was already stretching when I walked into the private training room, her braided ponytail swinging behind her like a whip. The floor smelled faintly of resin and leather. mats worn down from hours upon hours of werewolves honing themselves against each other. My muscles hummed with anticipation, though a heavy wariness still clung to me from all the public courtesies I had been forced to perform. Ready? Maya arched a brow, already dropping into a stance. I nodded and rolled my shoulders. More than ready. We began, but within minutes our rhythm splintered. I couldn't get the maneuver right. Maya wanted me to use my momentum differently. Less force, more angle. But every attempt ended in failure. She corrected me once, twice, then sighed, frustration leaking through her patience. No, Sarah, you're not redirecting. You're charging. Look. She moved through the motion herself, smooth and clean. You let their energy carry over. You don't fight it head on. I am trying, I muttered, stepping back into position. My palms stung from hitting the mat wrong. You make it sound simple, but my body won't. Stop fighting the flow. She cut in, clicking her tongue. Then she flicked my forehead. You're overthinking again. I scowled at her, rubbing the sore spot. She just smirked. Again, and this time, she tapped the side of her temple. Empty here, God damn it. I tried again, failed again. The slap of my body against the mat echoed too loudly in the room. Heat crawled up my neck. For all the progress I had made these past weeks, this small nuance seemed impossible. The glass door slid open. Both our heads turned at the same time. Ethan leaned against the frame, arms crossed, hair flopping lazily over his forehead. Having fun? He asked dryly. Maya groaned as I bristled. Don't start. She shot me an exasperated look. She's refusing to understand basic redirection. I'm not refusing, I shot back. I stopped, pressing my lips together. My bruised pride didn't need another witness tonight, especially not my older brothers. Ethan walked in anyway, ignoring my glare. Show me. I blinked. Excuse me? Do the move, he said, nodding toward Maya. Maya, go on. Maya shrugged at me. Might as well. He's not a half-bad fighter. Ethan snorted. You've forgotten how easily I can put you on your back, babe. Maya smirked, leaning into him. I cleared that memory in favor of all the other ways you can put me on my back. Ethan's teeth sank into his lower lip. Yeah? How about later tonight? Okay. I exhaled sharply, shooting to my feet as Ethan's head began to dip, a suggestive glint in his eyes. I supported their relationship, but I absolutely did not want a front-row seat to the canoodling. Maya winked at him and mouthed, later, before turning back to me. Rolling my eyes, I squared my stance opposite Maya. We went through the motion again. I pivoted, tried to redirect, and failed just as miserably as before. The result was me flat on my back, staring up at the fluorescent lights with my hair splayed like a halo. See? Maya muttered. Ethan crouched beside me before I could scramble up. He shook his head slowly. You're resisting at the wrong point, Thop. You want to push, not catch. Watch. Without asking, he pulled me to my feet like I weighed as much as a bag of feathers, then gestured for Maya to lunge at him. Without hesitation, she did. Sharp, precise, but Ethan moved differently. He caught her momentum fluidly, almost lazily, shifted his stance, and suddenly, Maya was the one with her back on the ground. That, he said, straightening, is what she's trying to teach you. Maya blinked, gracefully pushing herself to her feet. You actually did it better than me. Don't sound so shocked. His mouth curved in a brief smirk, then his gaze returned to me. You're trying to meet force with force, Serafina. That's not how our instincts work. Lockwood blood doesn't only hit head-on, it adapts. Something prickled at the back of my mind. Lockwood blood? He nodded. You keep fighting as if you're an outsider who has to learn from scratch. But that instinct, you already have it. You're resisting your own nature. I snorted. You're joking, right? No way my brother was suggesting I had some innate fighting instinct when I didn't even have a wolf. Maya crossed her arms. You mean she's making it harder by not trusting herself? She cocked her head and shot me a knowing look. She's thinking too fucking much? I rolled my eyes as Ethan continued. Exactly. His expression was unsettlingly earnest. You already feel it before you move, Sarah. That's what tripped me up when I was younger. I didn't trust the flicker. Thought it was just a reflex. But it's instinct. Lockwood instinct. And you obviously have it in droves, seeing how far you've progressed in such a short amount of time. I crossed my arms. So now you're attributing my hard work and determination to what? Genes? Surprisingly, he smiled. You're stronger than I was. It took me quite a while to figure out that Father wasn't trying to drill something foreign into me. He was just trying to teach me how to stop ignoring what was already there. He would have been proud of your progress. The mention of my father seemed to poison the air. The reminder that he'd never seen it fit to train me. Celeste hadn't cared to train properly, and he'd respected her wishes. But I'd wanted to. And he shunned me, threw a dumbbell at the door the day I peeked in to watch one of his private sessions with Ethan. The thought of him being proud of me would have been laughable if I wasn't too busy trying to breathe through the sudden pain in my chest. I turned my back on Ethan and Maya, busying myself with picking up my water bottle. I heard Ethan sigh. "Sarah." I shoved my towel into my bag without answering. The scrape of the zipper was too loud. "Serafina," he said again, the apology thick in his tone. "He was wrong. We were all wrong. I'm so sorry." I stilled. Hearing it from him unprompted made my throat constrict, but the memory of years wasted, of pain I had carried alone, rose like a tide. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Maya shifted uncomfortably, then clapped her hands. "Okay, this is depressing. How about dinner? My shift was long, training was longer, and I refused to go home hungry." Ethan hesitated, eyes flicking to me warily, no doubt recalling the hot mess that was the last time we dined together. "If she doesn't want—" "I'll come," I cut in, slinging my bag over my shoulder. His brows shot up. I couldn't blame him. I was surprised at myself. "You will?" I forced a small smile. Consider it payment for the lesson. The relieved, grateful smile on his face blasted away any reservations that this was a bad idea. The restaurant Maya chose was a cozy one on the edge of the district, low lights and polished wood, the air fragrant with herbs and sizzling butter. The kind of place that made you forget the world outside for a while. We found a booth near the window. Maya immediately ordered a plate of garlic bread with too much cheese, grinning widely and chattering animatedly as if determined to keep the mood light by sheer willpower. When the bread arrived, steaming, Maya dove in first. Ethan leaned back against the booth, watching me with a quiet expression I didn't know how to interpret. "You've changed," he said after a moment. If I had a penny for every time I'd heard that phrase. "Meaning?" I arched a brow. "You're not brittle anymore. Or maybe I'm just noticing too late." Maya shot him a warning look, but he didn't back down. His words weren't cruel, just contemplative. I could sense he was being careful with me tonight. I broke off a piece of bread, shrugging. "You're late to many things." "Ethan," that earned a huff of a laugh from Maya. Even Ethan smiled ruefully. "Fair enough." For a while, the conversation drifted to lighter ground. Maya recounted a disastrous sparring session involving an old trainee, too much bravado, and a broken window. Ethan countered with hilarious tales of his early training days and the countless bruises he gave himself, and I actually found myself laughing, genuinely, the tension loosening like knots slowly untying. Maybe this was what it felt like to breathe among family, without the poison of old grievances, constantly choking the air. But then the restaurant door opened. The chime above it was delicate, almost lost in the chatter, but I felt the shift before I even looked up. When I did, I almost honest-to-goodness burst into laughter, because someone was definitely playing games with my life, and they'd run out of original moves, so they just kept repeating the same old bullshit over and over again. Hence, there they were, like a fucking rash that just wouldn't clear up. Celeste and Kieran, Serafina's Pove. Maya hadn't even properly shut the car door before she burst into uncontrollable laughter. The sound echoed around the enclosed space, wild and unrestrained, until tears streaked down her cheeks. She slapped the dashboard, gasping between wheezes. "Oh my goddess, Sarah, did you see her face?" she managed, choking on her giggles, like a fucking cat dropped in a bathtub. I leaned back into the leather seat, a smirk tugging at my lips despite my best attempt to keep it subtle. "You're lucky Ethan had pack matters to attend to and can't ride with us. If he sees you laughing this hard at his sister, he might reconsider claiming you as his mate." Maya twisted toward me, wide-eyed and mock-offended. "Excuse you, I am a gem of a mate." She puffed out her chest. "I'm dignified, mature." I arched a brow. "Mature? You nearly rolled under the table when the owner told Celeste to apologize or get blacklisted." Her laughter renewed, a full-bodied eruption that had her clutching her stomach. I couldn't resist anymore. A chuckle slipped from me, light and unguarded, And if smug satisfaction raced through me at the Celeste's humiliation, oh well. As the laughter subsided, a calmer silence settled between us. It was punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the bustle of the city blurring past the windows. My thoughts flickered back to the restaurant, the heavy tension, Kieran's sharp inhale, and his deep frown when Celeste slapped that poor server, the exact second the owner's voice cut through the commotion like a blade. For once, it wasn't me standing at the center of mockery. It was them, Kieran and Celeste, leaving in disgrace, heads bowed, Celeste clutching at her juice-stained dress as though it were a wound. Kieran hadn't said a word to her, hadn't even looked her way when he guided her out the door. That image lingered, vivid and utterly satisfying. Maya broke the silence with a curious glance. Can I just say how impressed I am? My brows knit slightly. At what? You, babe, she answered. You really didn't flinch once, not when she crashed our dinner or threw those thinly veiled jabs at or tried to worm her way between you and Ethan. You just stayed calm and completely unfazed. I exhaled slowly, watching the neon blur of a sign disappear into the rearview mirror. I don't give them the privilege anymore. Celeste, Kieran. For too long, I thought avoidance was the best line of action. I snorted. But that proved virtually impossible. And I was tired of feeling like shit every time I clashed with them. I shrugged, drumming my fingers lightly in my lap, so I decided I was done letting them dictate how I feel. Maya nodded in understanding. So what then? You just ignore her? Pretend none of it matters? I shook my head. Not pretend, I acknowledge it, but I don't give it weight. Celeste can perform her theatrics until her throat goes hoarse. Kieran can glower as if the sun rises and sets with his approval. But I don't need to care about what either of them does. In the grand scheme of what now matters to me, they're hilariously inconsequential. For a moment, she was quiet, absorbing my words. Then she let out a low whistle. That's pretty fucking impressive, Sarah, seriously. I envy that composure. Me? I'm one more Celeste stunt from ripping her hair out, strand by fucking strand. The rough edge in her tone made me smile. That's why you're my balance, Maya. If she pushes too far, maybe I'll just point her your way. Gladly, she muttered, a wicked gleam in her eyes. By the time we reached my house, the night had cooled, the faint scent of rain clinging to the air. Maya parked in my driveway, stretching as she stepped out. I followed, adjusting the strap of my bag across my shoulder, only to halt at the sight waiting by my door. Lucian. He leaned casually against the frame, arms crossed, dark hair catching the faint glint of the porch light. Even in the shadows, his presence was unmistakable. An anchor, a steadying pull. My chest tightened in quiet surprise. He'd mentioned being busy these past days, unreachable even through calls. To see him here now felt like an unexpected reprieve. Well, Maya sing-songed, elbowing me before I could speak. And here I thought you were going to bed alone tonight. Guess I was wrong. I shot her a look, but she only grinned wider, backing away. I'd best get going then. You can. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, she called over her shoulder, then paused. Then again, there are a lot of things I would do. She winked suggestively. Do those. Maya, I groaned. Her laughter trailed after her as she slid back into the car. Heat rose to my cheeks and I rolled my eyes, though inwardly I couldn't deny the faint thrill her teasing stirred. Lucian's gaze lingered on me as Maya's car disappeared into the night. Hey. I smiled, stepping closer. He reached out, gently taking my hand. You look lighter tonight. His voice was low, even, carrying that subtle rasp that always seemed to reach beneath my skin. I suppose I am, I admitted. It's been an eventful evening. His brow arched, amusement flickering. Really? My smile widened, my amusement rising. Do you want to come in? I'll tell you all about it. Actually, I can't stay long, he said regretfully. I have a meeting in half an hour. Disappointment dragged my lips downward. Oh, his thumb brushed over my knuckles soothingly. I really just came to give you this. I couldn't wait. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, withdrawing a small velvet box. My breath caught as he extended it toward me. What is this? I asked, half cautious, half curious. A piece of my history, he said simply. I sent for it from my hometown, and fortunately, it came just before the LST gala. With careful hands, I opened the box, and my held breath whooshed out of me. Nestled inside was a necklace, delicate yet striking, the chain fine as a spider's silk, supporting a luminous emerald pendant that gleamed faintly even under the dim light. An old-world design, etched with craftsmanship that spoke of generations. My fingers trembled at my sides. Surely I wasn't worthy to touch such a masterpiece. It belonged to my grandmother, Lucien explained, his voice quieter now. She left it for her grandson's future partner, someone she believed would understand what it means to carry both strength and grace. For a long time, I wasn't sure if I'd ever give it to anyone. The words sank deep, wrapping around me with both weight and warmth. Lucien, I want you to wear it at the gala, he interrupted gently. His gaze held mine, unwavering. 2 days from now, when the halls are filled with rivals and allies alike, I want them to see not just OTS's value, but my choice. I want them to see you. The pendant glinted between us, but his eyes were brighter still, burning with something fierce and unyielding. My throat tightened, emotions tangling too complex to untangle in one breath. He took my hand and gently, reverently placed the box in my open palm. I closed it softly, clutching it to my chest. You're giving me more than a necklace. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it, he said, stepping closer, his hand tenderly brushing my cheek. Say you'll wear it and stand by my side. You're the only one I want to. For once, I had no need to guard myself, no need to compare or measure or wonder if I was enough. In that moment, with Lucien's gift pressed against my heart, I felt seen, and I was ready to let the world see me too. Serafina's Pov. The OTS hall had been gorgeously transformed. Silken banners cascaded from the rafters, catching light from the chandeliers above so that everything shimmered with a faint golden glow. The air thrummed with conversation, a low hum of power and politics, interwoven with laughter, glasses clinking, and the weight of eyes that seemed to evaluate everything at once. Guests poured in steadily. Alphas in tailored suits, Lunas draped in masterpieces of curves and contours, allies and rivals mingling under one roof. And at my side, Lucien. I slipped my hand into the crook of his arm, pulse steady despite the cloud of expectation hovering over the room. The necklace he'd gifted me 2 nights ago rested cool and solid against my collarbone, its pendant a reminder with every subtle shift of movement. His grandmother's legacy, meant for the woman who was worthy to stand beside him. Tonight, I had to live up to that. Lucien's voice was steady as he guided me through the hall from one introduction to another. Serafina Blackthorne, he said with quiet pride, his hand never straying far from mine. My partner. I greeted each alpha, Luna, and dignitary with measured grace. No fumbling, no shrinking. My words didn't feel like scraps of forced politeness or nerves, and their appraising gazes didn't burn the way they used to. They didn't make me want to shrink and hide away. Instead, I met them evenly, a faint smile tugging at my lips when someone's gaze lingered too long on the pendant. I felt poised, not exactly perfect, but composed, confident, and tonight that was enough. Then from the crowd, a figure emerged who made Lucien still beside me. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair threaded with faint silver, though his face bore only a few years more than Lucien's. His presence drew attention like gravity itself, though it was less sharp than Lucien's controlled authority and more rooted like an oak tree. William. Lucien's voice carried both surprise and warmth. The man smiled faintly as he approached, his gaze flicking once to me, then down to the pendant around my neck. He stopped short, his brow raising in something that looked very much like shock. I tensed. Is something wrong? The man, William's eyes snapped up to mine, and his expression softened almost instantly. Not at all. Only, that necklace is not given lightly. His mouth curved into something between a smile and a knowing smirk, that faint surprise still lingering. He must love you deeply. The word struck me harder than I expected. Love, Lucien had spoken of wanting me, of choosing me, of wanting me by his side. But love, that was completely uncharted terrain. My pulse faltered, and for a beat I forgot how to breathe. Also, who was this man to make such an observation? Before I could speak or ask my question, Lucien smoothly interjected, ignoring William's comment. Sarah, I always intended for you to meet my brother, he said, his hand resting lightly at my waist as his gaze cut to William. But OTS has been demanding, and LST even more so. William came tonight to support me and to meet you, Sarah. Brother, I blinked, suddenly seeing the resemblance. Lucian's piercing navy blue gaze softened in William's eyes, but their bone structure was similar, the way they carried themselves, the quiet intensity in the set of their jaws. "It's an honor," I said, inclining my head. "And mine," William replied, his smile warm and disarming in a way that instantly put me more at ease. A flurry of movement caught my attention, and Lucian's head dipped toward a flustered-looking Omega, whom I recognized as the one overseeing catering services for the gala. Lucian nodded once and turned back to me and William. "If you'll excuse me," he gave me an apologetic smile, "there's an urgent matter I have to attend to." William smiled. "I'll keep your partner company. Don't worry, brother." Lucian's touch lingered on my waist as he slanted an incomprehensible look at his brother, and then his touch disappeared as he followed the Omega into the hall. My side suddenly bereft, I became aware of how quickly the crowd could close in when I was alone. William must have sensed it, and he effortlessly slid to my side, taking Lucian's place. He offered me a glass of wine from a passing tray and a reassuring nod. "I'm sure he won't be long. In the meantime, I'll keep you company." I accepted the glass, fingers curling around the stem. "Thank you." William's smile was calm, reassuring. "You're handling yourself well tonight. Most would feel cornered, standing at the forefront of an event like this." I exhaled softly, amused. "I suppose that means I'm hiding my nerves better than I thought." "Or," he countered gently, "you're steadier than you give yourself credit for." A smile tugged at my lips. "You sound practiced at putting people at ease, very like your brother." He seemed pleased at that and raised his glass in mock toast. "That is a high compliment." For a moment, silence stretched comfortably, then curiosity pulled at me. "Will you tell me what he was like? Before OTS, before?" I waved around the glamorous hall. "All this?" William's chuckle was low and warm. "Lucian doesn't talk much about the past, does he?" "Not really," I admitted. "He's always so focused on what's ahead." "He's been that way for as long as I can remember," William mused. "But once, even though he wasn't the first son, he was the prime candidate to lead our family's pack. Everyone expected it. He was smarter, stronger, more ambitious than most, even me, then." I tilted my head, intrigued. "And yet he didn't?" William's eyes softened, his tone contemplative. "He chose his own path instead. Strayed for a while, lost his way, but ultimately, his destination didn't change. He still sought to lead, to build something of his own. Shadowvale is impressive, but I think OTS is his truest expression of that." I let the words sink in, slowly swirling the wine in my glass. I was surprised to hear that Shadowvale hadn't been Lucian's birthright, but honestly, I wasn't surprised that he'd walked away, carved something new, forged his own vision. It fit him. He was too scrupulous, too uncompromising to inherit someone else's mantle. "Was he always this composed?" I asked, my curiosity growing. William barked out a laugh. "Composed? Hardly. He was a wild child, mischievous, impulsive. He and our little sister Sabrina were constantly at each other's throats, always brawling, always competing. We thought the roof might cave in some days." I laughed with him, the image too surreal to hold in my head. Lucian, the man who barely flinched at chaos, who could calculate 10 steps ahead in a single breath, once an unruly boy throwing fists with his sister? The thought left me marveling, and wondering if I would ever be privileged to see that side of him. "He doesn't look it now," I murmured. "No," William agreed, smile softening. "But that spark is still there, controlled, directed. He's only more dangerous for having tamed it." Before I could respond, movement from the corner of the hall caught my attention. A woman approached, tall, elegant, with hair the color of gilded bronze and eyes like jade. Her dress clung to her figure in strategic places, and her alpha aura wafted off her like perfume. Her smile edged in challenge before she even opened her mouth. "Seraphina Blackthorne," she greeted, though her eyes slid briefly to William, recognition flickering in her gaze, then back to me. "I've heard quite a bit about you." "Have you?" I asked carefully, straightening. "Oh yes," her lips curved. "I'm Helen, an old acquaintance of Lucian's." The pause before the word acquaintance was telling. William stiffened almost imperceptibly beside me. His voice was low, a murmur meant only for me. Translation: she pursued him once. He rejected her. My stomach tightened. Lovely. Helen's eyes glinted. I couldn't help but notice the necklace. She tilted her head. A bold gesture. But words and gifts can be deceiving, don't you think? Perhaps we should test how well you fit Lucien's world. I frowned. Test? She gestured toward the far end of the hall, where an entire section had been cordoned off from the main throng of mingling guests. Silken ropes marked the boundary beyond which the mood shifted from formal elegance to something more playful. There, attendants moved between clusters of guests as they tested their skills at various diversions. A table laid with strategy games, a dartboard gleaming under lantern light, even a sparring ring where a few young warriors circled each other under watchful eyes. But the centerpiece was the row of archery targets set up against a reinforced backdrop. Bows of polished wood and quivers of feather-fletched arrows were neatly arranged on display, gleaming under chandeliers. The sharp twang of bowstrings occasionally pierced through the hum of music, followed by the scattered applause of onlookers. Helen's eyes flicked deliberately toward the targets. "A friendly game," she said smoothly, though her tone left no doubt she meant anything but. Then her smile sharpened, wicked with challenge. "If I win, you leave, Lucien." The bluntness, the sheer audacity of it took my breath for a moment. "Excuse me?" Then colder, "If you refuse, well, I doubt Lucien would want such cowardice around him." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. I wasn't here to play childish games of jealousy. But my gaze flickered around, and I noticed the gathering crowd, the watching eyes. The weight of OTS's reputation pressed in, and I knew refusal wasn't so simple. I'd been officially introduced as Lucien's partner. If I backed down, it wouldn't just be my pride that suffered, it would be Lucien's standing. I straightened, meeting Helen's eyes evenly. "And if you lose?" Her smile faltered, just a fraction. "I won't." I took a step forward, voice steady. "When you lose, you'll accept a condition of my choosing." Murmurs rippled nearby, attention sharpening, anticipation coiling in the air. Helen's smile returned, sharper now, almost hungry. "Agreed." I held her gaze, my pulse steady despite the storm beneath my skin. Let her think me a coward, let her think me unworthy. I'd show her and everyone watching exactly how wrong she was. Serafina's Pove. The bow was heavier than I expected, but it settled into my grip like it belonged there, and the comfort of its familiarity soothed me. A hush rippled through the crowd as I stepped into the cordoned-off area. My stomach churned, not from fear, but from the sheer awareness of how many eyes followed my every move. The rules had been called out, loud and clear. No werewolf heightened senses, only human skill and focus. Helen stood across from me, already poised, bowstring taut, eyes gleaming with smug confidence. Good. Let her underestimate me. The attendant raised his hand. "First round, 3 arrows each. Highest total score advances." I inhaled, exhaled. The string drew back against my cheek, the feather of the arrow brushing my jaw. My heartbeat steadied as I released. Thwack. Dead center. Gasps echoed. Scattered applause. Helen fired next, solid but just shy of the bullseye. Her mouth tightened, smile faltering before she forced it back on. The rest followed the same rhythm. My arrows sang truer, sharper. By the final shot, the outcome was undeniable. The attendant lifted his arm over my head. "Winner, Serafina Blackthorn." Applause crashed like a wave, rousing and unrestrained. Even those who hadn't cared a moment ago now leaned forward, curious, impressed. Helen lowered her bow, jaw rigid. For a heartbeat, I thought she'd throw a tantrum, contest my win, express outrage at being bested by lowly Serafina. Then, with stiff dignity, she inclined her head. "As promised, I owe you a favor. Name it when you wish." I smiled, bowing slightly, though my chest still heaved with adrenaline. I'll keep that in mind. More applause followed, approval washing over me like warm sunlight. For the first time in such a public arena, it wasn't whispers of doubt that followed my name. It was admiration. But then, like a discordant note cutting through harmony, a voice pierced the air. "Unimpressive." The single word slithered across the crowd, silencing claps. My stomach coiled instantly. I knew that voice. Abby. She stepped forward, arms folded, eyes bright with scorn. "Really, everyone's so easily dazzled. Archery, darts, knife-throwing. Those are all Lockwood specialties. It's practically bred into them. If anything, Serafina is only playing her part as a Lockwood daughter. But..." Her lips curled. The true archery queen was always Celeste. The name struck like a spark to dry wood. Curious murmurs rippled, heads turning, and of course, summoned by the attention, Celeste stepped out gracefully from the crowd. Abby easily fit beside her, flanking her along with Emma on the other side. Her dress caught the light like spun silver, her smile soft, deceptively demure. "Oh, Abby," she said, voice uneasy-smooth, feigning modesty, "you exaggerate." But her eyes glittered with triumph. Her favorite place to be had always been under the spotlight. Someone in the crowd spoke up eagerly. "Then prove it! A contest between the sisters." My grip tightened on the bow. Sister. The word rang hollow now, a mockery. Celeste's gaze swept over me, dripping with false concern. "Oh, I really shouldn't," she cooed, her smile sickeningly sweet. "Serafina's worked so hard to make tonight a success, it would be cruel to let her suffer humiliating defeat before such a prestigious audience." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. I felt the weight of their eyes shift toward me, pity mixed with expectation. Celeste had staged it perfectly. If I refused, I'd appear fragile, a coward like Helen had insinuated. If I accepted and lost, I'd confirm her superiority. But Celeste had forgotten one thing. I was no longer the girl who yielded to her to keep the peace. I stepped forward, my voice calm but clear. "I accept." Just like at the restaurant when she hadn't expected me to call her bluff, Celeste's composure slipped, surprise flickering in her eyes before she quickly smothered it. The attendant reset the targets with swift efficiency. Celeste lifted her bow first. Her posture was impeccable, her smile vainglorious. She fired 3 perfect shots, each one splitting the bullseye with precision that drew gasps and applause. I wasn't surprised. Her archery skills truly had always been formidable. My turn. I matched her arrow for arrow, bullseye for bullseye. But while the crowd applauded, I could feel the skepticism in the air, expectation that I'd falter eventually, that Celeste's dominance was inevitable. By the 3rd round, Celeste was glowing with satisfaction, drinking in the murmurs of admiration. So I decided to kick it up a notch. "Blindfold me," I said. The attendant blinked. Are you sure?" I nodded. The crowd stirred, whispers rising in disbelief. Celeste's smirk widened, certain I'd overplayed my hand. The cloth pressed against my eyes, shutting out the world. Darkness enveloped me. But in that darkness, my breathing steadied, my heartbeat slowed. I felt the weight of the bow, the whisper of chilled air across my skin, the faint creak of wood beneath my fingers. I didn't need sight. I had done this before, in secret, when I was younger, testing myself, pushing boundaries, because accuracy to me had never been about sight alone. I inhaled deeply, released. The arrow flew, thwack, dead center. I didn't need to look to know. The silence was deafening. A second shot, thwack, another bullseye. Gasps erupted, disbelief, awe. I nocked the final arrow, pulse steady as stone. When it struck, splitting the shaft of the first, an explosion of applause erupted, wild and unrestrained. I slipped the blindfold off my face, and I blinked into the brilliance of the chandeliers. Cheers filled the hall. Celeste's expression was pale fury, her lips pinched, her hands trembling on the bow she was gripping too tightly. "Extraordinary," someone shouted. "Incredible." The admiration wasn't for her anymore. It was for me. Emma's voice sliced through the noise. "Celeste, you can't let her overshadow you. Show us something more dazzling." But Celeste didn't move. Her composure cracked, and for once she knew she couldn't top this. Her voice was sharp, brittle. "How did you do it?" The crowd hushed, leaning in. I stepped closer, my voice low but carrying. "Do you remember when we were young, Celeste? When we played in the garden throwing darts and arrows at painted boards?" Her eyes narrowed. "I always won." "You always won," I affirmed softly. "Or so you thought. But the truth is, I let you, because Mother told me once, 'Let Celeste shine, it makes sense. It keeps everybody happy.' So I held back over and over. Gasps rippled around us. Celeste stiffened, her fury clear. I lifted my chin, meeting her eyes evenly. "But we're not sisters anymore. I have no reason to keep holding back. Not tonight. Not ever again." I stepped past her, leaving her trembling in the silence that followed. "So if you're humiliated," I said quietly, "it isn't me doing it. It's just you finally facing the truth." The crowd erupted again, this time in thunderous applause that rolled through the hall like a storm. My name rose above the din. Admiration, respect, awe. And for the first time in my life, I stood tall, while Celeste burned beneath the heat of the spotlight she loved so much, Serafina's Pove. Maya practically launched herself at me the second I stepped out of the hall's cordoned-off space. Her arms wrapped tight around me as she squealed in my ear before I could even catch my breath. "Serafina Blackthorn!" She gasped dramatically, shaking me as if I might have somehow forgotten who I was. Do you even realize how utterly insane that was? Blindfolded. I swear you could have walked straight out of some myth. Her words tumbled over each other in excitement, eyes sparkling with pride that almost rivaled the applause I just walked away from. I laughed, a little breathless still, patting her back. It wasn't as spectacular as everyone thinks. Just a few tricks I practiced when I was bored. Tricks? Maya pulled back, mouth falling open. You make it sound like you taught yourself card shuffles, not splitting arrows blindfolded. That was more than a trick. That was fucking legendary. Her conviction made pride bloom in my chest, but I shrugged anyway, trying to deflect. If I let myself stand too long under the heat of praise, I'd feel my skin burn. Movement caught my attention and my eyes reflexively sought it out. Across the crowded hall, standing half in shadow, was Kieran. His eyes were fixed on me, sharp, searching, and layered with something I couldn't quite decipher. Surprise? Pride? Regret? Whatever it was, the weight of it pressed on me, too fucking familiar, too fucking complicated. I turned my head deliberately, ignoring the knot in my stomach. He had no right to look at me in any way, and I wouldn't waste a single brain cell trying to understand him. Not anymore. Come on, I said softly to Maya, nudging her toward the corridor. Let's get out of here before someone decides I need to juggle flaming swords next. She giggled, looping her arm through mine, and together we slipped away from the swelling crowd. The noise dulled behind us, replaced by the cool hush of the side hallway. Finally, I could breathe. But I hadn't taken 5 full steps before Ethan appeared, leaning casually against the wall as if he'd been waiting all along. Ethan? Maya gasped, leaving my side to go to his. His arms wrapped around her waist with a natural ease that teased a smile to my face. She leaned against him, her grin wide. Did you see that? He nodded, his gaze on me intense in a way that made my throat tighten. I saw. And then quietly he asked, Why didn't you ever tell me? Tell you what? I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. That you could shoot like that. His voice wasn't angry, more bewildered, a little wounded. That you weren't just a passable shot, but extraordinary. All this time you let me believe. He shook his head, cutting himself off. I exhaled, fingers flexing around the phantom feel of the bow. Because it was never about being extraordinary. It wasn't even about being good. It was about passing the time. His brows furrowed. No one ever invited me to play with them, I continued, my voice quieter, softer. No one wanted me on their teams. So while you and Celeste hung out with the other kids in the pack, and Mother and Father pretended I didn't exist, I practiced archery against the old garden wall. Again and again. Until I could hit a mark with my eyes closed. Because what else was I supposed to do? Sit inside till I faded into nothing. A shadow passed through his expression. I could see the realization sinking in, what I hadn't said outright but lingered between us. The neglect, the isolation, the quiet cruelty of constantly being overlooked. Celeste and I played once or twice, but even then I had to pretend I was subpar so I didn't bruise her gigantic yet fragile ego. Ethan's jaw clenched. His usual easy confidence faltered, and he seemed caught between words and silence. I didn't know, he admitted finally. Serafina, I didn't know. I forced a smile, though it felt unsteady. Not knowing doesn't erase it. Before the moment could stretch any further, a familiar voice cut through the tension. There you are. Lucian approached with his usual calm authority, his presence shifting the air instantly. Relief surged through me at the sight of him. Stunning as ever, he murmured, his eyes sweeping over me, warm and appraising. And making headlines without me, I hear. I arched a brow. You heard? He gave me a rueful smile. I would have preferred to see. I can't believe I missed the performance of the night. A shame. I lifted my chin playfully. You'll have time to see more performances once LST is over. You can judge for yourself then. His smile widened, something almost conspiratorial in it. I'll hold you to that. Ethan and Maya lingered at the edge of our conversation, but Lucian's presence made them feel like shadows receding into the wall. Come, Lucian said, extending his hand slightly, palm open. It's time for our speech. I hesitated only a second before slipping my hand into his. I glanced at Maya, and she shot me a wink and a small wave as Lucian led me away. Together, we moved back toward the grand hall where anticipation buzzed like electricity in the air. The stage was set for the keynote, the emblem of OTS illuminated in silver light against deep velvet drapes. As Lucien and I stepped up side by side, a hush descended. We stood shoulder to shoulder, his presence steady as stone beside me. And I didn't feel like a guest dragged along to stand in the background. I truly felt like his partner. Lucien's voice carried first, resonant and commanding, weaving words of vision and strength. He spoke of unity, of innovation, of the trials that had shaped OTS into what it was today. Then he gestured toward me, seamlessly passing the spotlight, and none of it would be possible without those who stand with us. Serafina, will you share your thoughts? Hundreds of eyes turned. My heartbeat stuttered, but then steadied. I lifted my chin, recalling the faces of Maya, of Daniel, of everyone who had chosen to believe in me when I couldn't even believe in myself. My story, I began, isn't one of power inherited or privilege granted. It's one of persistence, of survival and determination. OTS stands for that same resilience. We are not the strongest because we were born so. We are strong because we refuse to break. The words flowed easier with each breath. By the end, the crowd was leaning forward, listening, not with skepticism but with respect. Lucien placed a hand lightly against my back, subtle but steadying. And because of that spirit, he announced, voice ringing with finality, we are proud to unveil this year's prize. An attendant stepped forward, unveiling a glass vessel that seemed to glow faintly under the lights. A collective gasp swept the hall, mine included, since even I hadn't been privy to Lucien's grand prize. The Moondew Nectar, Lucien declared. The name alone sent ripples through the audience. Murmurs broke out instantly, disbelief, awe, hunger. I could see the way even the most jaded alphas leaned forward, eyes wide, unable to mask their fascination. The vessel shimmered like liquid starlight, its pale silver hue shifting as though made of moonlight itself. I had heard whispers of it before, but never imagined seeing it in person. The Moondew Nectar, said to be brewed from an ancient plant that only bloomed under the rarest lunar phases, said to purify, restore, heal the unseen. Not a potion of strength, but of clarity, a chance to realign with one's wolf, one's very soul. Few in history have even laid eyes on it. Lucien continued, even fewer have tasted it. Tonight, it stands as our grand prize, for the victor who proves not only strength, but ambition and tenacity worthy of it. The uproar that followed was like thunder, gasps, cheers, disbelieving shouts. Excitement rolled through the hall in waves, electrifying the atmosphere. I glanced at Lucien, who stood calm amidst the storm he had unleashed, lips curved in the faintest, most knowing smile. And beside him, I realized I was no longer a bystander. I was part of the storm, Serafina's Pove. The hall still hummed with noise long after Lucien's announcement. Excited murmurs collided like sparks from flint, igniting speculation in every corner. The Moondew Nectar, could it be real? Someone called out, their tone half awe, half disbelief. The Moondew Nectar doesn't exist, someone else barked, disbelief curling through his tone. It's folklore. No, I've read papers on it, another insisted, breathless. The plant's real? The recipe? Lost centuries ago. How could OTS possibly have it? Or, is this all a clever trick? Speculation tangled with awe until the whole place was a fever dream. I didn't need heightened hearing to catch the words, impossible, fabricated, mythical, priceless. The voices around me tangled together, awed gasps, suspicious whispers, greedy mutterings. My hands fisted the fabric of my dress harder than I intended, my knuckles whitening. This was no ordinary prize. It was more than glory, more than wealth. Whoever claimed it would wield a miracle. Lucien stood tall before the case, his expression carefully composed but unmistakably proud. His dark suit caught the gilded light, his presence commanding the entire room. Doubt, he said smoothly, his voice carrying with the authority of a born alpha, is natural, but truth does not need belief to exist. A murmur rippled again, skeptical yet attentive. And then, because of course Lucien would leave no room for doubt, he lifted his hand. The massive screen behind us flickered to life. The image sharpened into the face of a man even I recognized, a pharmaceutical master, gray at the temples, with a reputation untouchable in the werewolf world. His work in medicine and elixirs was often called revolutionary, his name whispered with reverence like an incantation. Master Kadir, Lucien introduced, A name that requires no embellishment in our world. He has examined and authenticated the elixir personally. The man adjusted his silver glasses and nodded into the camera. Yes, he said plainly, and what OTS has unveiled is no counterfeit. I have examined samples of this elixir personally. The moon dew nectar is real. Gasps swept the room anew, this time edged with exhilaration. Skeptics fell silent, their folded arms loosening. And then the hall erupted. Some cried out in wonder, others muttered feverishly, while a few still shook their heads, stubbornly unwilling to accept what their eyes and ears told them. But it no longer mattered. Lucian had brought forth an unimpeachable authority. I found my pulse racing, heat crawling up the back of my neck. The weight of the prize pressed down on me, heavier than expectation. I wasn't just competing for prestige now. This was about legacy, salvation, hope, for so many. For myself. And yet, despite the knot of nerves in my stomach, a strange fire lit inside me. Excitement, determination, as though the nectar itself was daring me. Come and earn me if you are worthy. When the evening's formalities finally drew to a close, Lucian was at my side almost instantly, his hand finding the small of my back with the kind of easy claim that made warmth dart up my spine. Come with me, he murmured, steering me gently but firmly away from the dispersing crowd. His pace carried me out of the grand hall and onto a private terrace tucked along the hall's edge. Cool night air swept against my skin, carrying the faint perfume of roses from the garden below. Above us, strings of lanterns glowed like captive stars, their light softening the world into something almost intimate. Your expression betrays you, Lucian said softly as we walked toward the railing, his tone teasing but edged with something cautious. You're still thinking about it. How could I not? I glanced up at him, my voice low, almost reverent. The moon dew nectar, it's the stuff of myths. Logically, it shouldn't actually exist, yet here it is. I shook my head. It's so surreal. Lucian chuckled indulgently. It's actually not that unbelievable. The formula was not mine to begin with. His tone carried a note I rarely heard from him, a wistfulness threaded with something close to grief. It was entrusted to me by someone I once knew. There it was again, that shadow flickering across his expression before he mastered it. I tilted my head, curiosity sparking. Someone you knew? His lips pressed into a thin line. She shared with me the basics, but the attempts to replicate, hundreds of them, failed. It was only after tireless trial and error that we achieved success. She? The word slipped out terser than intended. A faint smile curved his mouth, not quite reaching his eyes. A friend. A friend. Yet the soft longing in his tone betrayed more. I caught it, tucked it away in the back of my mind for examination later. Still, before I could probe further, he deflected, leaning closer. Tell me honestly, Serafina, do you resent me for not giving the nectar directly to you? The question disarmed me. My breath hitched. For a moment I imagined it, me, healed, whole, powerful beyond my wildest imaginations. And yet I shook my head slowly. No, I understand. Something that precious, you can't just give it out recklessly. Too many others need it too. I'd rather earn it. That way it's mine, rightfully. Lucian's gaze deepened, heat and admiration mingling in the pools of his eyes. I have no doubt that you will win it. Really? He nodded. If my friend were here, I know she would want someone like you to have the nectar. Integrity and bravery, she prized those above all else. The word struck me like a bell, echoing in my chest. Not only was I now carrying Lucian's confidence, but the conviction of someone I had never even met. And then, as if sensing the weight of my nerves, Lucian took my hand. I have something for you. He gestured toward a chair near a table draped in silver cloth. Upon it sat a long, elegant box, its surface etched with faint designs that glimmered in the lantern light. What's this? I asked cautiously as he led me towards it. A gift, he said, his voice lower now, carrying that elusive softness I like to think he reserved just for me. I exhaled. You've already given me so much, Lucian, he smiled. Then consider this a reminder. A reminder? Due to a conflict of interest, I can't have any contact with you during the LST. I don't want to jeopardize your victory with false accusations or speculations. Oh, and even though he was still in front of me, I felt a pang of his absence resonate within me. But he raised our joined hands and kissed my knuckles. Even if we won't have contact during the trials, you are never alone. My pulse quickened as I slowly lifted the lid with my free hand. Inside lay an outfit folded with meticulous care. With trembling hands, I unfolded it, and my breath caught. I could tell it was tailored for me, down to the last seam. Midnight dark fabric, kissed with threads of silver, cut sleek and strong, meant not just to flatter, but to empower. It was beautiful, yes, but more than that, it felt like armor woven from his belief in me. Lucien, my voice faltered. You had this made for me? His lips curved, but the gleam in his eyes was what stole my breath. For you, to wear when you step into the trials, so that when you walk into that arena, you'll know I am with you, even if I cannot be at your side. I swallowed hard against the tightness rising in my throat. My fingers brushed the fabric, trembling faintly. You didn't have to. I did, he interrupted gently. You've carried so much. Tonight I wanted to give you something that carried you in return. The night air pressed cool against my cheeks, but my chest was unbearably warm. For a moment, words failed me, tangled in gratitude and something I couldn't describe. I gently set it down into the box and reached for him. A cough broke the moment. I startled at the sound, the thread of intimacy between us snapping as my head whipped toward the balcony's entrance. Maya stood there, one hand half raised as if caught mid-apology, her cheeks tinged pink. Her dark curls framed her face wildly, and her ever-present air of mischief softened the awkwardness of her intrusion. Sorry, she said quickly, her grin both sheepish and unrepentant. I wasn't spying, and I didn't mean to intrude. Well, not on purpose. I exhaled, half relieved, half annoyed. My heart was still racing from Lucien's words, and now I had to shove all that tangled emotion aside. Maya. I tried to sound reproachful, but it came out more weary than anything else. Lucien arched a brow, leaning back with an almost amused sigh. You have an uncanny talent for interruption. Part of my charm, she shot back, unabashed. Then her attention swung fully to me, her eyes lighting up. As a judge, I also won't be able to have any contact with you during the LST. My eyes widened. You too? She crossed the terrace with brisk steps, then clasped my hands dramatically in hers. You're going to crush them, Sarah. Absolutely obliterate the competition. And I brought a gift of my own. Lucien's lips twitched. Oh, goddess, spare us. Maya ignored him. With a flourish, she pulled a tiny pouch from her pocket, scattering a few glittering pebbles onto the table between us. They caught the lantern light, shimmering iridescently. I blinked. What are these? Moonstones. Charged under the last full moon. Totally legitimate werewolf good luck charm. She winked. Don't ask me where I got them. My sources are top secret. My lips twitched. The flea market? Shush, she laughed. Then she arranged the stones into a crooked circle, muttered something that might have been half prayer, half joke, then grabbed my wrist and pressed one into my palm. There. Now you've got the blessing of fate itself. Guaranteed victory. I laughed, curling my fingers around the stone. Maya, I know. You love me, she declared, beaming. I shook my head as more laughter bubbled from my lips. She wasn't wrong. The three of us lingered there, the moon's glow spilling across the terrace, quiet and steady. I looked at them, two of the most important people in this strange new chapter of my life, and something inside me settled. I'll try, I said softly, breaking the silence. The words felt both fragile and solid, like glass forged into steel, but it bore the weight of their faith in me. I don't know if I'll win, but I'll give everything I have. I promise. Maya squeezed my arm, grinning. That's the spirit. Lucien's gaze lingered on me, unreadable but searing all the same. That's all anyone can ask of you, and it will be enough. Under the silver wash of the moonlight, I breathed in deep, letting the night carry my vow into the dark. Lucien's povey. The following morning, I was back at OTS before the sun had fully crested the horizon. The compound still hummed from last night's spectacle. Echoes of voices, whispered disbelief over the moon-dew nectar, air charged with a promise too big to ignore. Even in its quiet hours, the place felt alive, pulsing like a heart that beat in rhythm with my own ambition. I didn't allow myself too much time to bask in it. There was a lot to do. With the preliminary rounds looming closer, my desk was littered with reports, schedules, and last-minute revisions. I moved through them with brisk precision, my pen slashing signatures across pages, my voice sharp and commanding as I dictated responses to my staff. Every detail mattered. Every piece had to fall perfectly into place. But even as I leaned over the glowing monitors, watching the arena, my focus slipped. The rigid control over my thoughts loosened in that brief reprieve. And then she was all I could see, Zara. Once one thought slipped past my mind's blockade, more followed. For once, I didn't resist. I closed my eyes and let the wave wash over me. The twinkling music of her laughter, the bright sparkle of her eyes, the searing ache of her touch. It felt so wrong that I was here, making all these preparations without her. After all, OTS had been her dream as much as it was mine. I remembered her perched on the edge of the table in one of these conference rooms, gesturing wildly with her hands as she described how she wanted the arena to feel. Grand, yes, but not suffocating. Dangerous, but not reckless. A place where warriors would be tested to the marrow of their bones, yet also given the stage to prove their worth before the world. Her passion had been a storm I willingly walked into. Her brilliance had ignited me in a way nothing before or after her had. My eyes tracked the latest projection of the arena's layout, pillars rising like ancient monuments, shadows cut sharp across the sand, the faint shimmer of protective wards designed to heighten the trial's intensity. I could almost hear her voice again, teasing, insistent, challenging. I could imagine her next to me, peering over my shoulder. "Perfect, Luke," she would whisper, pressing her lips to my temple. "It's perfect." But then, just as suddenly as the ghost appeared, Zara faded, leaving behind an unfortunately familiar hollow ache. In her absence, Serafina's face surfaced, vivid and inescapable. It happened without my consent, a cruel trick of my mind. And of course, like I'd been doing since I met Sarah, I began to compare them. Sarah didn't burn with the same fever Zara had, no. But her quiet strength, her refusal to bow even when the world had all but broken her, lit something fierce, determined, unyielding in me. This time, thinking of Zara, and the way I measured Sarah against her, didn't wound me as it once had. Something like acceptance murmured beneath the old ache. It still carried weight, but the sharp sting of grief had dulled into something quieter, almost reverent. I would always carry her in the bones of this place, in the very fabric of my soul. But the radiance OTS was about to witness would not belong to Zara. It would belong to Sarah, and soon so would I. Still, unless the opportune moment arose, I would keep her true purpose, her true power, veiled. Sarah's role in this legacy was not for careless speculation or the greedy whispers of rivals. The truth about her would be revealed when I decided the world was ready, when she was ready. I straightened, rolling the tension from my shoulders. I'd slipped into my mind for far too long. I needed to rein in my thoughts and refocus on what mattered. I exhaled slowly and dragged my attention back to the present, letting the rhythm of order steady me. Fingers skimmed across the table's surface, pulling up the next set of reports, my mind snapping into the familiar cadence of logistics and command. The hum of screens, the shuffle of staff, the low crackle of intercoms, these were my anchors, and I let them pull me back into motion. The work, for all its weight, was strangely fulfilling. The closer we came to the opening of the tournament, the more I felt OTS aligning, not just with Zara's vision, but with my own. The edges had been honed sharper, the foundations deepened. It was becoming something worthy of the legacy it was meant to bear. By the time I dismissed the last aid, my temples ached with fatigue. I loosened the cuffs of my sleeves and leaned back, finally letting exhaustion creep in. The door burst open, and a young staffer nearly stumbled inside, chest heaving, eyes wide with panic. "Alpha Reed, there's a crisis." My jaw tightened. "Compose yourself, speak." He swallowed hard, visibly trying to rein in his trembling. "The Alpha we secured to serve as the final gatekeeper, boss. He just received word of an emergency. His pack needs him immediately. He's already departed." The words dropped like stones in my stomach. The gatekeeper boss, the final, most critical challenge of the LST, demanding not just strength but impartiality, qualities few Alphas possessed. That position wasn't just ceremonial, it was a cornerstone of the tournament's integrity. And now, less than a day before the first trial commenced, it was empty. I leaned forward slowly, steepling my fingers against my lips as I considered the options. We can't simply replace him with any Alpha. The wrong choice would jeopardize the entire event's fairness. The staffer nodded vigorously, sweat beading on his brow. "We've already reached out to several candidates, but Time is short, and most are entangled in obligations to their packs. None can arrive before the trial begins. Damn it. The gatekeeper wasn't just another piece of this puzzle. He or she was the crucible, the force that would push the contenders to their limits, the mirror against which their strength and resolve would be measured. Without the right candidate, the final trial would lose its teeth. Worse, it would lose its legitimacy. I pinched the bridge of my nose, mind racing. Possibilities flashed through me like cards shuffled too quickly to grasp. Each name I considered was discarded in the same breath, too weak, too biased, too far away. What I needed was someone formidable, someone whose presence alone commanded respect, whose strength was beyond question, and above all, someone whose loyalty to me or lack thereof would not compromise the perception of fairness. And then, unbidden, a name surfaced. Kieran. Of course. The thought was absurd, dangerous even. Yet as soon as it struck me, I couldn't shake it. Alpha Kieran Blackthorn of Nightfang. His reputation was ironclad, his dominance undisputed. Every wolf alive knew his name, whether it was because they respected him or despised him. And though his presence would no doubt ignite tension, perhaps that was exactly what the LST required. Formidable, impartial, untouchable. Except to me. And to her. My lips curved faintly, although I felt no amusement. Fate was cruel, weaving us into complicated knots. To put Kieran in that arena was to place him a step away from Serafina, closer than I would ever allow under ordinary circumstances. But this wasn't about my personal war. This was about OTS, about the legacy Zara had dreamed and the future Sarah deserved to shine in. The staffer's voice broke into my thoughts again. Alpha Reed, what are your orders? I rose from my chair slowly, the decision solidifying in my chest like tempered steel. I have someone in mind. I said, I'll speak to him myself. The staffer opened his mouth, perhaps to question me, but the look I gave him silenced the words on his tongue. He bowed stiffly and hurried out of my office. Alone once more, I stood before the broad window that overlooked the training grounds. Wolves were already gathering below, sparring in the early light, their movements crisp and powerful. The hum of their energy seeped through the glass, thrumming in my bones. Yes, it had to be Kieran. Not because I trusted him, definitely not because I welcomed him, but because on such short notice he was the only one who could stand as a gate no contender could simply walk through. And if I hated the thought of him coming even 100 yards from Sarah, I leashed those feelings. Decisions like these could not be made based on sentiment. Kieran's POV. As soon as I stepped foot into the OTS headquarters, I realized what a stupid mistake I'd made. But then again, wasn't I making a lot of those lately? When Gavin handed me the phone and told me who was on the line, my first instinct was to laugh it off. Maybe even toss the damned thing into my office fire pit. I had a hard time getting a handle on the kind of man Reed was, but from my experience, he wasn't the type who sought others out, or at least, me, unless there was a calculation behind it. And I was sure this meeting request from him wasn't courtesy, it was strategy. And of course, there was a chance that it was just plain old provocation. The LST was already making waves across the entire werewolf world, and my ex-wife was at the center of it all. Serafina, once overlooked and hidden, was now shining under the spotlight as Lucian Reed's star trainee. The image of her at the gala still clawed at me at the most inopportune times. The way she'd stood beside him, luminous in her gown, her chin tilted high enough to tell the world she wasn't afraid anymore. More than her beauty and fierce confidence, what really gutted me was the way she looked like she belonged there, next to him. It seemed that she had made her choice and was sticking firmly to it, and she'd chosen him. I should have hung up. I nearly did. My thumb hovered over the disconnect button, pulse pounding. But then, I didn't. Because wouldn't that be declaring that Lucian had some kind of hold over me? Maybe curiosity, maybe pride, most likely both, forced me to accept. The meeting location he proposed was the OTS arena itself. In the hours before our meeting, I'd struggled to find his angle and come up empty. As soon as I noticed he was becoming something of a fixture in Sarah's life, I'd had Gavin investigate his background more than once. But every report came back spotless. No illicit trades, no political missteps, no exploitable weaknesses. It was almost too perfect, as if he curated what people were allowed to see. and that was enough to make me suspicious. How had he built his empire so quietly and steadily? What were his plans now that he was stepping into the light? I had no answers for my countless gnawing questions, so all I could do was watch patiently, waiting for inevitable cracks in his flawless facade to show. And what better way to monitor him than on his turf? The OTS arena rose before me like some ancient coliseum reborn, its edges gleaming in the morning sun, shadows slicing across its structure. The closer I came, the more I had to admit, reluctantly, that no second-hand account had done it justice. This place wasn't just built, it was forged. Every stone screamed permanence, every curve of the stands bent toward spectacle, every shimmer of protective wards along the perimeter promised something both brutal and glorious. Lucian was already there, of course, waiting for me like he owned not just the arena, but the very air itself. His posture was easy and controlled, his hands clasped behind his back. The way his scrutinizing gaze washed over me made me bristle. "Alpha Blackthorn," he greeted, his low voice calm, to the point that it was unsettling. "Cut the pleasantries, Reed," I said, stepping onto the sand of the arena floor. The grit shifted beneath my boots, and I couldn't help imagining what it would feel like when soaked with blood. "Why did you ask me here?" His mouth curved slightly in the barest suggestion of a smile as he swept his arm around us. "You don't find it impressive?" I swept my gaze across the vastness of the place, the tiered seating that seemed to swallow the horizon, the wards that shimmered faintly like heat mirages. It was impressive, but I'd be damned before I admitted it aloud. "You didn't summon me here just to give me a tour of your playground," I hissed. "What do you want?" He turned his head, studying the light as it fell over the pillars that jutted from the ground. His silence stretched long enough to irritate me until finally he asked, almost idly, "Do you expect to witness her transformation here?" My chest constricted. I didn't need him to say her name. I knew exactly who he meant. Rage and regret battled in me as the memory of the gala returned in vivid detail. Seraphina's laughter spilling out, bright and bittersweet, her hand resting on his arm as if it belonged there. The pride blazing in her eyes, for him, never me. Realization hit me like a sucker punch. Lucian Reed hadn't called me here for business. The fucker called me here to gloat. "You bastard," I hissed, spinning on my heel. "You dragged me all the way here to what? Rub it in my face." I was halfway to leaving when his voice carried after me, sharp as a whip. "Aren't you the least bit curious?" I stopped. Against my better judgment, I stopped, because that was exactly what I was, curious. Lucian's tone deepened, deliberate. "Don't you wonder what allowed her to step out of the shadows?" He smirked, obviously proud of his wordplay. To stand tall, confident, unbreakable, to become so captivating? My fists clenched at my sides. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," he went on smoothly. "All I did was what you never managed. I didn't neglect her. I didn't hurt her." I whirled, fury burning hot in my veins. "You have no fucking right to lecture me." His composure cracked, but all it was revealed the steel beneath. "On the contrary, I find I do. Before I knew your history, I thought you were a great alpha, a wise man, someone worthy of respect." He shook his head, and the disappointment etched into his features made my teeth grind. But now all I see is weakness, a flawed man. The insult exploded inside me, a raw detonation of shame and fury I couldn't contain. "You think you can judge me?" My voice thundered, echoing through the empty arena. "You've known Seraphina for what, months? I shared a life with her, a marriage. We have a son together, Lucian. A son. That bond outweighs anything you can claim." He didn't flinch. "And yet the time I will spend with her from now on will surpass yours. The place I will hold in her life will surpass yours. And perhaps," his voice dropped, almost taunting, "we will have children together too. What flimsy thread will you then hold on to?" I snapped. I closed the distance in a heartbeat and drove my fist into his jaw. The impact reverberated up my arm, sharp and satisfying. Lucian staggered back, but he didn't fall. In fact, he straightened, wiped the blood from his split lip with the back of his hand, and smiled. "Finally," he murmured. "I've wanted this for a long, long time." The fight was instant, feral. Lucian came at me hard, his strikes clean and merciless, honed by years of training. I countered with brute force, each blow fueled by the rage boiling in my chest. Sand erupted beneath our boots, the walls of the arena vibrating with the echo of our clash. We weren't just fighting, we were venting. Every insult, every resentment, every buried frustration exploded into fists and claws and sweat. I caught his ribs with a savage hook, felt the satisfying crunch beneath my knuckles. He retaliated with a spinning strike that split my cheek open. Pain lanced through me, bright and hot, but instead of slowing, I roared and threw myself back into the fray. And God's help me, for a fleeting moment, I felt exhilaration. It had been too long since I'd fought someone who matched me blow for blow. Lucian wasn't just strong, he was disciplined, precise, relentless. Each strike met resistance. Each push found counterforce. The symmetry of it was maddening and intoxicating all at once. Minutes blurred into eternity. Sweat stung my eyes, blood dripped down my chin, muscles screamed in protest. Neither of us yielded. Finally, in one last furious exchange, we both struck at the same time. My fist slammed into his chest just as his elbow cracked against my temple. The force sent us both stumbling, collapsing into the sand. We lay there, panting, breath ragged and raw. The sky spun wildly above us. Pain tore through my limbs, mingling with a fierce surge of pride. I'd edged him out, barely but undeniably. Lucian sat up first, blood trailing from his mouth, and looked at me with something strange in his eyes. Not hatred, not anger, something closer to respect, and then he said it. "I want you to be the gatekeeper, boss." I blinked, the words almost absurd in the silence after our brawl. "What?" "You heard me," he said, voice steady despite the fight we'd just had. "The final gate of the tournament, the one no contender can walk through without proving themselves." I barked a harsh laugh, wincing at the pain in my ribs. "You brought me here, provoked me, fought me into the dirt, all to ask me to play doorman for your games." His mouth curved, faint and infuriatingly sure. "Not a doorman. The gate itself. The crucible. The one challenge no wolf can dismiss." Anger flared again, though this time it tangled with confusion. "And why the hell would I help you?" Lucian rose smoothly, brushing the dust from his clothes. Then he smiled at me amiably, as if we hadn't just tried to kill each other. "I have a feeling you will." My eyes narrowed. "Don't be so sure." He leaned down just slightly, his gaze piercing. "I am. You're the only one strong enough to carry that weight, and I know you want to prove yourself." To her. Then he straightened, already walking toward the exit. His voice drifted back, calm. "Final. I'll see you tomorrow. Noon. You know where." The arrogance in his certainty scorched hotter than my wounds. I surged to my feet, fury thrumming in my veins. With a roar, I slammed my fist into the arena wall. Stone cracked, fragments raining down around me. "Damn you, Lucian." The echo carried, mocking me. But deep down, too deep to admit aloud, I knew the bastard was right. I would accept. I could never walk away from a challenge, or from her, Serafina's POV. The OTS headquarters was alive before the first streak of sunlight broke the sky. The hum of voices, the scrape of boots across polished and rough stone, the scent of nerves sharp as copper in the air, all of it churned together into a current that dragged me forward. Today marked the first day of the LST, the beginning of a series of trials that would push us to our limits, revealing how far each of us had come since stepping into OTS, and ultimately deciding the fate of the alliances and fractures among the packs watching from the stands. I'd memorized the structure, chanted it back to myself like a mantra. 12 teams, 5 wolves each, 9 from packs scattered across the continent: Frostbane, Cypress Veil, Seabreeze, Granite Fang, Shadowclaw Ashvale, Duskbane, Moonfang, Bloodspire. And then 3 teams from the OTS itself. One of them was mine. I adjusted the hem of my jacket and felt the weight of Lucian's gift wrap around me like armor. I slipped my hand in my pocket, and my fingers curled around Maya's moonstone. I drew comfort from my gifts, knowing that even if I wouldn't see Maya and Lucian during the trials, I would carry a piece of 2 of my greatest cheerleaders into what felt like my most intense journey yet. The assembly hall was cavernous, its high ceiling latticed with banners from every participating pack, including customized logos for the 3 OTS teams. Wolves clustered in corners, voices low and charged, sizing one another up before the horns even sounded. When I found the placard with my team's designation, the tightness in my chest loosened. "Serafina!" Judy bounded toward me, her ponytail swinging animatedly behind her. She was grinning so wide her cheeks looked ready to split. You're with me? I asked, surprised warmth rising inside me. Damn right I am. She nudged my arm with a laugh. I couldn't help it. I smiled. In this jungle brimming with tension and agitation, Judy's familiar face was a tether I hadn't realized I needed. Come on, she said, tugging me toward two others who hovered a little apart from the crowd. Meet the rest of our merry band. The woman was plump, her eyes downcast beneath a curtain of chestnut hair. She fiddled with the hem of her sleeve, shifting her weight like the floorboards burned her soles. This is Talia, Judy announced. Hi, Talia murmured, so softly I had to lean in to catch it. And this is Finn. The man beside her gave a small nod. Tall and lean, his posture folded inward like a book unwilling to be read. Which was ironic, because I remembered seeing him once or twice in the OTS library, tucked away in the corners between shelves. It's good to meet you both, I said brightly, smiling warmly. Talia flushed crimson, eyes darting anywhere but me. Finn only gave another tight nod. Before I could press further, a voice cut through the air like a knife. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. We turned. Roxy, the last of our team members, stood there, arms crossed, scowl deep enough to bury us all. The last time I'd seen her, she'd been glued to Jessica's side in the locker room, more like a shadow than a person. Now her eyes swept over our group with disdain so vicious it made Talia shrink behind Judy. My rotten luck, Roxy muttered. Stuck with a pack of weaklings. My stomach tightened, but I didn't speak yet. Excuse me? Judy snapped, squaring up immediately. Roxy's lips curled. Don't play dumb. This isn't a team, it's a death sentence. An Omega parade with an Alpha-born reject thrown in as a pitiful attempt at flavor. She shook her head. This has to be some kind of setup. I arched a brow. How so? She folded her arms, her eyes sharp with challenge. Everyone knows Jessica and I are a team, and we work seamlessly together. Throwing me in with this, her nose scrunched up. Pathetic mix is an attempt to weaken Jessica's team. She glowered at me. I wonder for whose benefit? I scoffed. You're not seriously insinuating that. That's exactly what I'm insinuating, she hissed. Talia's shoulders curled inward. Finn's jaw ticked once, but he said nothing. I inhaled slowly, letting the words wash over me. Then, with deliberate calm, I stepped forward. I don't care how you think we came to be, Roxy. Like it or not, we're a team now, I said. My voice didn't rise, didn't strain, but it carried. If you can't accept that, we won't even survive the first round. But Roxy wasn't done. She shoved past Judy and jabbed a finger toward me. If I have to do this, then I'm leading this team. I'm the strongest here. That's the only way we make it past round 1. Judy snorted so hard she nearly doubled over. You? Lead? You couldn't lead an army of ants. She threw an arm around me, pulling me forward. If anyone's leading, it's Sarah. She's alpha blood. She's abandoned blood, Roxy spat instantly. No pack, no backing, no worth. Heat flared in my chest, but before I could answer, Judy snapped, Watch your mouth. Roxy's smirk widened. She liked the sting she caused. I took a slow step closer, meeting her eye. If you're so sure, then let's make a wager. Her brow twitched, and I saw her intrigue. I continued, I will lead our team, and if I can't lead us to victory, I'll leave OTS entirely. Or you can lead the team, and if you lose, you leave. I heard Judy's sharp intake of breath and wondered what the fuck I was thinking. But for a flicker of a moment, Roxy's bravado faltered, and I knew there was no going back. She snarled, arms crossed tighter, fury simmering at my audacity. Judy let out a roar of laughter. Oh, I like this. Look at you, Roxy. You're shaking. Afraid of being shown up? Roxy bristled, cheeks darkening, but she said nothing more. Well, I pressed. Fine, she bit out at last. Lead us, Alpha-born, but don't you dare drag me down. If we lose because of you, you'll wish you had left. Her words hung like a guillotine in the air. I didn't flinch. I only inclined my head, solemn. We won't lose, if we stand together. That's the key. If we fracture, we're done. Talia peeked at me from behind her curtain of hair. Finn's gaze lifted briefly, something like respect flickering there before it was gone. Roxy turned away with a scoff, muttering under her breath. Judy, however, slapped me on the back with enough force to jolt me forward. Gods, I'm glad you're leading, she crowed. Otherwise, I'd have to kill her before the tournament even started. I exhaled, the smallest ghost of a smile tugging at my lips. But with it came the weight of the responsibility I'd just willingly placed on my head. I only hoped to goddess I could put my money where my mouth was. Once the final rosters were confirmed, I stepped forward to retrieve our entry passes. Each was a slim strip of obsidian etched with glowing runes humming faintly against my palm. When pressed together, the 5 strips lit up as one, our bond, temporary though it was. Team assembled. The examiner at the desk confirmed, his voice deep and bored. You'll enter through gate 7. Good luck. I nodded and turned to my team. Let's go. We walked together toward the waiting arena, the sound of thousands of voices swelling beyond the stone walls. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a strange, fierce clarity. For better or worse, these were my people now. Judy with her surprising, unwavering faith in me. Talia with her trembling awkwardness. Finn with his gentle reserve. Roxy with her bitter fire. 5 wolves bound together by chance, and I at their head. The gala was essentially the opening ceremony, so the LSTs would begin without preamble. There was nothing more between me and my hardest challenge yet. The gates loomed ahead, shadows stretching long across the sand. The first round awaited. I tightened my grip on the obsidian pass and whispered to myself, a vow no one else would hear. We will endure. Serafina's Pav. All the arenas were clever illusions and simulations. But it was hard to remember that when we stepped into the misty woods, it breathed like a living thing, and every step forward pulled us deeper into its lungs. The fog swirled thicker until the world dulled into muted grays and greens. The air clung to my skin with a dampness that seeped beneath my jacket, the bitter tang of herbs stinging the back of my throat. Somewhere above, I sensed the outline of the sun trying and failing to burn through the haze. Its light was scattered like shards of glass. We'd been carefully and explicitly given the rules at the gate, but I'd simplified it in my head, reciting those too like incantations. 3 moonstone shards, 12 hours, finish line. The first 9 teams would pass, the rest would be out of the competition. The fog was supposed to be crucial to the trial, a concoction brewed from a blend of ground herbs that tampered with the mind and senses. It blurred vision, muffled scent trails, distorted balance. For most wolves, it was crippling, but not for me. Not really. The ache of loss knotted sharp in my chest as I thought of it, of her, my wolf. She would have probably hated this fog, would have snarled against the confusion it spun. But without her, my senses were stripped down to human dullness. The fog rolled in, but it found little to corrupt. I was spared the worst of its bite. So were the others. Omegas, whose wolves weren't strong enough to register much of the interference in the first place. Talia, though still fidgeting nervously, didn't stumble as others did in the distance. Finn moved with a strange steadiness, his hand brushing against tree trunks as though cataloging them in his mind. Even Judy, though her wolf twitched at the edges, seemed unbothered. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lucien had designed this. I knew it in my gut. He'd chosen this fog, this challenge. But what for? To even the playing field? To show us that our disadvantage could be turned into leverage? Or just to test the depths of our weakness? The forest whispered no answers back, only the rustle of leaves and the occasional distant crack of a branch snapping under another team's weight. We found the first moonstone shard within the first hour. It was wedged into the trunk of a dead tree, its pale glow faint through the fog, like moonlight bleeding through water. Judy yanked it free with a triumphant whoop, brandishing it high. The shard pulsed faintly in her palm, runes etched along its edge humming with power. 1 down, she grinned, teeth flashing, eyes bright despite the haze. 2 to go, I reminded, though a thrill spread through me at her joy. We pressed on, weaving deeper into the woods, through marshy patches that sucked at our boots and over ridges where jagged stones jutted like teeth. My lungs burned with exertion. My fingers flexed unconsciously around the entry pass, tucked into my jacket pocket next to Maya's moonstone. It was during our search for the second shard that the trouble began. Roxy lagged at the back, her movements agitated and restless, like a wolf pacing the bars of a cage. I felt her stare drilling into my spine. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with venom. "It's cute how hard you're trying," she said, voice low but cutting through the fog, "but you'll always be just a replacement." I turned slightly, enough to catch her out of the corner of my eye. She stopped, leaning against a boulder slick with moss, her arms crossed, a sneer curling her lips. What do you mean? Judy snapped, bristling. She knows exactly what I mean, Roxy said, eyes locked on me. Jessica told me all about it, how Lucian once had a mate he actually loved. You'll never be her, you know. You're just the stand-in. Her words slithered through me like smoke, curling into the cracks where my heart was still healing. My chest clenched, a flash of memories playing in my mind. The conviction with which Lucian explained the mate bond, the dark, brief shadows that crossed his face, the longing in his tone when he talked about his friend. I folded my arms. Tell me more about this so-called mate. Roxy faltered. I never met her but Jessica. Right, Jessica. I wasn't stupid enough to believe anything that came from Celeste Peniro's mouth. I forced my breathing steady, my gaze steady. If you think repeating Jessica's words will unsettle me, you'll have to try harder. I kept my tone cool, flat. Inside, my heart thudded harder than I liked. Roxy's eyes narrowed at my calm. Frustration sharpened her features. I could see how badly she wanted me rattled, cracked open. When she realized I wasn't giving her that, her lip curled further and she went for the jugular. Fine, she spat. Then let's talk about who you really are. She glanced around at the rest of our team, who had stopped in their tracks and watched our interaction with bated breath. Do you all know the truth about your precious leader? She sneered. About how she used underhanded tricks to force an alpha into marriage? My breath hitched, and she smirked, leaning in close. How he threw you away like the pathetic whore you are, and now you're trying to latch on to Lucian, who again belongs to someone else. Her voice rose, slicing through the fog. Pathetic. You shut your filthy... Outrage sparked in Judy's expression, and she lunged forward, fists clenched, but I caught her arm before she could reach Roxy. Don't, I murmured. This was my fight. And then I moved. In 2 strides, I had Roxy pinned against a mossy boulder that my forearm pressed hard against her throat. Her eyes blew wide, her hands scrabbling against my arm as she choked, the fog spilling in and out of her lungs raggedly. You talk a lot, I said, voice steady, almost conversational. But this, I pressed harder, enough to make her wheeze. This is what you've got? Baseless rumors, insults? Is this the strength you claimed would lead us? She gurgled, her fingers clawing uselessly at my jacket. I could see her wolf flickering in her eyes, but in a chokehold, no wolf could shift. And apparently, contrary to all her boasting, she wasn't stronger than me. Her bravado drained with every breath she couldn't take, panic flickering in her gaze. I leaned close enough that only she would hear. If you can't learn to shut that mouth, I will exercise my authority as leader and remove you from this team. Right fucking now. Which means you'll be disqualified from the competition entirely. Would you like that? Her eyes flared wide, the fight slipping from her. No? I mused. I didn't think so. So you're going to put a muzzle on, and we're going to get through this as a team. I increased the pressure on her throat ever so slightly. Right? Slowly, stiffly, she nodded. I held her a beat longer, long enough to sear the message into her brain, then released her with a shove. She staggered forward, coughing, clutching her throat. Behind me, Judy muttered, Damn. Talia's face had gone pale as parchment. Finn's gaze flicked to me, unreadable. Roxy hunched, wheezing, but the fury hadn't left her. It blazed hot in her eyes, even more than before. You'll regret that, she rasped, voice raw. Then she spat at the ground and turned sharply, storming into the fog. I don't need this sorry excuse of a team, she snarled over her shoulder. I'll find the shards myself. Her figure dissolved into the haze until nothing remained but the echo of her footsteps and the weight of her words hanging between us. Silence followed, heavy and uneasy. Talia wrung her hands, glancing at me. Should we go after her? Finn shifted, his expression tight. She could jeopardize us if she runs into another team. I drew a slow breath, forcing calm into my coiled muscles. Let her go. Both their heads snapped toward me. What? Talia whispered. She needs space to cool off, I said firmly. Chasing her now will only make it worse. Besides, I gestured to the fog around us, the endless trees. We're all looking for the same shards. Our paths will cross again. Judy studied me, brow furrowed, but her mouth twitched like she wanted to grin. Well, damn, Sarah. Remind me never to piss you off. I ignored her, though the smallest smirk tugged at my lips before I could stop it. Still, as we pressed on, the echo of Roxy's insults gnawed at me like a wolf at bone. Replacement. Pathetic. whore. I set my jaw and pushed forward. We had a mission to fulfill, and I'd be damned before I let her or anyone else decide what I was worth.